You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 10. Today's episode is all about how my guest found her niche and created her business from a tiny rooftop apartment in Paris. Being an entrepreneur was the last thing she thought she would ever do, but turns out she was meant to be one. You will learn from her experience starting a business, what she recommends focusing on when it comes to content creation, but most importantly, how to set boundaries in your life and love yourself, flaws and all. This is a jam-packed episode that I took so much away from, so I know you will also. So let's get to it. You are listening to Love Unplugged, a podcast focused on love in all its forms. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon, hopeful romantic and founder of Revue Blanc. I've found that too often love is set aside or taken for granted, and we tend to forget how to care for ourselves and our relationships in the day-to-day chaos. So let's slow down, tune in, and begin our journey of rediscovering love. From honest heart-to-heart conversations with real couples and knowledgeable guests, to deep dive reviews of new products and services that will help you feel beautiful inside and out. If you're looking for relatable advice or wanting to be inspired by real-life love stories, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's get to it. Hi, everybody. I am so honored to welcome Courtney Shaw, a successful entrepreneur and founder of the Rule Breakers Club here in Vancouver, BC, where she helps entrepreneurs up-level their businesses. So today we're going to learn all about how she balances owning a successful business, how she fits in a self-care routine, and then what advice she has for entrepreneurs to take their businesses to the next level. So welcome, Courtney. I am so excited to have you as my guest. And I'm so excited to learn all about your story, your passion, your business. But before we start, for those that don't yet know you, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to be interviewed and people be curious about anything that I've done or have to say. I started my business actually. So I have a French degree from university. I'm from Michigan originally, and after I finished school, it was 2009. So it was the middle of the recession. And I always joke that I couldn't even get a part-time job at Target. Like that was like my low, I'll just get a job at Target if I have to. And they wouldn't even give me a call back. So I was really in a place that was difficult. Like I have this French degree. How am I going to make money? But I actually ended up moving to France for a year to teach English in an elementary school. And it was while I was in France for that year that I started thinking about what am I going to do with my life? What career do I want? What am I going to do with this French degree? And while I was in France and living in Paris, I was thinking to myself, I can never go from this to a regular 9 to 5. I can't do it. I cannot physically do it. It is not in my DNA. What am I going to do? So I really spent the next couple of years. So that I started that journey in 2009. It was 2011 when I started my business. I actually had ended up moving back to Paris because I'd met my now husband. And I was trying to make money. I didn't have a visa to live, let alone work there. So I had to make money under the table. So I had to get really creative. I was nannying. I was tutoring ESL. I was on Skype, which was like a newfangled, exciting thing at the time. Now it's like super outdated. Nobody uses Skype anymore. I was tutoring American high school students in French on Skype from Paris. And I would stick my laptop out the window to show them the Eiffel Tower. And they were like, "My!" And it was so cool. And I was like, wow, I can make money doing random things. What if I could just do this forever? And my goal at the time was, if I could just make $30,000 a year forever, I'd be so happy. Of course, I was 22. So $30,000 sounded like so much money at the time. But I just wanted to be kind of bohemian and travel and live out of a suitcase. So that's how I got started. That path has been a long, winding one. I never thought I'd end up where I am today, where I own a company. I live in Canada. I am married. I live somewhere. I invest in my retirement. These are not things that I thought I was going to be doing. but I followed the path, and that path slowly unraveled into, I do want to start a business. Okay, how do I do that? And then just learning as I went, not thinking I had to have the plan laid out in front. Sometimes we think that, right? Like, I need to know, I need to plan, but I never would have ended up here if I had tried to plan it, because I didn't know that where I am now was a thing, because it wasn't.
Back then, no.
No,
not
exactly.
At all.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So you didn't always want to own your own business, basically.
No, I made fun of people in college I had a friend who was in the young entrepreneurship club. And I was like, that is the stupidest thing ever. I told her, I was like, entrepreneurship sounds terrible. You just work more than everyone else. You never get to take a vacation. Because I was picturing, my picture was somebody who owns like a local hardware store. Like that was for me. And I was like, you're trapped and you have to have employees. To me, that was very oppressive sounding. It sounded like a prison. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't know what I wanted instead. Mm-hmm. I was very unclear on that. I didn't want a 9-to-5 either, but at least it sounded like a 9-to-5, like I'll get some paid vacation. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I never, ever, ever wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm 100% an accidental entrepreneur. And I've really had to embrace that. And this is key. I really had to change my identity along the way, because the Courtney who was in Paris could not be doing what I'm doing today. She would never have had the patience for it. She never would have been willing to have such big goals or stick to something so long, or to be so focused. And so that's been really the biggest part of the journey, has been really questioning who I am as a person and deciding that I can change that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a big change.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you moving to Paris.
Let's, because who doesn't want to talk about that?
Yeah. It's always a dream. So you moved there by yourself at a very young age.
Yeah. So I'm going to back up a little bit. When I went off to college, I had no idea what I wanted to study. Again, I was very clear. I'm rebellious. I'm creative. I knew I was meant to do something that probably didn't exist, and I had no idea how to figure out what that was. There was no specific career that called to me. When I was 18, living home in the summer after my first year of college, my stepdad died. And when my stepdad died, which is literally like 13 years ago this week, I just was like, what am I doing? Like, I need to do what I want. And it just became very clear to me. I wanted to study abroad in France. Like, I was like, I want to do that. I'm going to do it next summer. So I went back. I signed up for the study abroad program. I ended up I declared French as my major because I was like, I just love it. Like, screw it. I just love it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but life's too short. And so through that, I actually started dating a guy who was also a French major and was also going to study abroad in France, in Paris and Nice specifically. And so we did a lot of this journey together. And when I was in Nice, I was like, I have to come back. Like, I have to spend more time here, because our study abroad was only 6 weeks. So once we graduated, I was still with the same guy. He also was doing the same teaching program in France with me, but he was placed in a different city. And I kind of always knew that relationship wasn't going to work, but he was kind of like this only person in my life who could see that this is what I wanted to do, and that he was doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that was really great at the time. But once I moved, so we did move together. We took the same flight, and, we spent time together, and then we went to our, separate cities. And then I was right at that point where I was like, I have to end this. Like, this relationship is past, finished its purpose in my life. And so I ended that relationship. So I did move with that boyfriend, but I released that once I got there. I think I was holding on to security and safety.
Gotcha.
And that gave me the courage to do it, because I was utterly terrified. And then I, went all around by myself, and I, built that confidence. But confidence is built by taking small actions outside of your comfort zone. I don't think you have to do some wild and crazy thing. I think it's just like, what is something that pushes the limit for me? And so that's what got me there. So I moved with him, and then realized I could let him go. And then I had this fabulous time, exploring who I was and really becoming an adult in Paris. That is weird.
Yes. Especially on your own.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. That's great that you kind of overcame that and you figured out what you needed to do to get to where you needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's always been a journey of what do I need to do right now? And I don't have to justify it to myself or especially anyone else. And sometimes I think we need to make these pro and con lists, and that can be helpful. But if you just feel like in your bones, like I need to do this thing, but you can't find a logical reason to justify it, maybe don't find a logical reason. Maybe it's your subconscious brain or your heart or whatever you want to call it. Maybe if you believe in some higher power, something is calling you to do that, whatever it is. And us trying to use our logic to try to justify everything we do, I think is a really bad idea.
Yeah, you can overthink things and then it can totally stop you from actually moving forward sometimes.
Yeah, because sometimes there is no logical reason to move to Paris.
No.
There is no logical
you
reason.
Should.
The logical reason is I want to.
Yes. That's good enough. So what exactly inspired you to create the Rule Breakers Club? Like, did it just immediately start as the Rule Breakers Club and you knew what you were doing? Or was it like phased and changed as you kind of went?
When I moved to France, I started a personal blog. You can still find it, I think, at eurocourt.blogspot.com. I'm pretty sure it's still there. I have no idea. I haven't checked lately, but I just, chronicled my journey in France, and I started getting some really good feedback from friends and family. Like, wow, your writing's really good. And that was really helping to build my confidence because I didn't think I was good. Like, I was a good academic writer. I actually was a writing consultant at my university, and I knew I was really good at academic writing. But this sort of like personal essay blog kind of style, I was like, this is very self-indulgent. But people loved it. And I was like, okay. So slowly I started to get more confidence in that. And it was when I moved back to Paris. So I was there for a year. I met my now husband. My visa expired. I moved back home to Michigan, got a job, was miserable, had an anxiety attack, ended up in the hospital, was doing all these random freelance jobs. And I was like, I got to go back to France, bought a one-way ticket and just left. So went back. And when I was there the second time was when I was like, okay, I've got to figure out what I want to do, because that job I had that wasn't working, the situation I was in that wasn't working, I feel like I was going backwards. And I was like, I want to start something. I want to make my own money. And I decided on the name, the Rule Breakers Club, because I decided what was most important to me at the time was to remember that I don't have to follow anyone else's plan, and that what I was doing was really crazy to a lot of people in my life, but that I wanted to remind myself that this is who I am. And I never wanted to fall into the trap of following society's plan for what I should be doing. And I was like, if I name my business the Rule Breakers Club, I can never forget that. I can never forget it. So now, or, however many years later, 8 years later, I'm probably going to drop that name when I rebrand my business because I don't find it necessary anymore. It's kind of like a little bit disassociated from what I do, and I don't really talk about the name that much. But it still is. It's this really fun name, like that when I tell people my business is the Rule Breakers Club, they kind of know if they're going to like me or not. Like they kind of know if they're into it or not.
It sets the tone. Really.
It does. And I find that people are attracted to me because they're like, oh my God, I'm in that club. And then they kind of get to know what I do and what I specialize in, which is very strategic and business oriented and things like that. But it sets the tone for my personality and the expectation to have for who you're going to expect when you get to know me. Yeah.
Kind of filters through the clients, right?
Yeah.
Be sure that the right ones are coming to you that you're going to really be able to help.
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So starting my blog and also, being part of a startup in my 9 to 5, I realized that starting a business is a ton of work. I'm not going to lie.
To put it lightly.
That is definitely putting it lightly. It's insane. So I'm sure you can totally attest to that. Starting from scratch, trying to figure out everything that you need to do, where you want to go, setting up goals, trying to find clients. You're putting on so many different hats as an entrepreneur that you have to excel at, which is insane in my head. But can you share some things that you've learned from starting a business from the ground up? Things that you've maybe made errors in and that you've kind of learned from those experiences, or tips that you have for entrepreneurs wanting to now start a business?
Yeah, we have 6 hours to go over this, right? Just kidding. One thing I want anyone to know who is thinking of starting a business or has just gotten started and is like, oh my God, yes, I'm overwhelmed. I want to know. if I had known how hard it was, I never would have done it. And I'm so glad I didn't know because I'm so glad I did it. Do you resonate with that?
Oh God, yes. I would have never done it.
Never in a million years. Like I said, I thought entrepreneurship I was kind of right. Like it is a lot of work and it can be a prison, but it also isn't. It's so much more nuanced and it's so hard to explain if you're not in it. So I don't want to give any kind of blanket statement other than just don't quit. All you have to do is not quit. Like at any given day, if you feel like quitting, just don't quit. And quitting isn't taking a day off. Quitting isn't getting a job to, sustain yourself financially. That's not quitting. Quitting is throwing in the towel and not trying anymore. That's quitting. So all you have to do is not that and just keep going. And that's what I realized that several years ago. I was like, I don't have to achieve any specific goal. I just have to persevere. And by perseverance, it's just not giving up. So I just have to show up and not shut down my website and not even if I take a break, I just have to come back. That's it. And when I realized that, they gave me such a sense of relief that I didn't have to hustle and do stuff every day. I just had to not literally throw my business out the window. And so I would say the biggest, let's unpack this question, right? So the things I wish I had known are that it's a marathon, not a sprint, that your first year of business, you probably shouldn't turn a profit. You probably should expect to break even, not even break even, probably zero out at the end of the year. My first year of business, I think I made $8,000. And then the next year I made 16. And then the next year I made 32. And then 60. And then it got up to 100. And then, so it's this slow evolution. And I think I'm a bit of a tortoise. So some entrepreneurs are extremely ambitious, extremely achievement driven. I'm freedom driven. And I think that's clear from what I've said about myself. Yes. So I think it's about knowing what motivates you. I'm motivated by living my life the way I want to live it. And so I will never, it's just not in me to sacrifice fun in order to achieve something in my business. It is not in me to sacrifice my relationship with my husband in order to achieve something in my business. There was a time I was going through a launch of a course. This was a few years ago, probably 2014 or 2015. And my husband was in the hospital. My boyfriend at the time was in the hospital and I was in the middle of a launch. And I decided to stop the launch to take care of him. And that was a big realization to me that he's more important than this, hands down. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I'm going to give up my business for him. It's not one or the other. It's just, I need to make sure that my actions are showing what my priorities are. And for me, that is being able to travel, being able to, for us to be able to go out to eat and have fun and take time off and binge stuff on Netflix, because that's what I love to do. And so I bake that into my business. So I think that's important to know. I wish I had realized that up front, that there are people who are not in business for freedom. A lot of people, most actually, are in business for achievement. And that if I'm not that person, those people are probably going to grow faster than me, but they're also sacrificing a lot that I'm not willing to sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that I can't achieve these goals. It just means that I've put my priorities in a different order. And I'm not judging that. There is no right or wrong way. It's just knowing what is your way.
You have to figure out what's important to you and how you want to live your life.
Exactly. And know why you're doing this. Mm-hmm. And that, again, is having that Rule Breakers Club name kept reminding me of that. I am not this. And I'll tell you now, I'm the business owners that I hang out with and that I go to events with and that I'm in, coaching groups with, they're making or on their way to making $1 million a year. And I have something to provide to them, which is I lighten things up for them. They're often really serious people who don't let themselves off the hook and they need a little bit of a break. And they love that I'm there to provide that. And I love that they're there to push me a little bit. And so you and I were talking a little bit, I can't remember if it was before we started recording or not, but about how some of us are more creative and some of us are more process oriented. Mm-hmm. And again, there's no right or wrong, but know your strengths, know your passions, know what you love and what you don't like. It doesn't mean that those are faults that you need to fix or that you can just ignore your budget because you don't like money. You're going to have to deal with that mm-hmm. stuff, but it's okay that you're not excellent at it and it doesn't come easily to you.
And I love what you were saying before, because we weren't recording when we were talking before. But you surround yourself with people that are different than you, so that you guys all balance each other out. And whatever your strengths are not, other people have those strengths that they can kind of push you to do those things that you necessarily don't really feel great doing.
Definitely, like, study yourself and other people. Why, like, what is motivating the people to do what they do? What I love to do is I decide something I want to work on in my life or in my business, or they're kind of the same thing, honestly. And then I think, okay, who do I know who has achieved this or does this, or this is just a part of who they are, part of their DNA. It's automatic to them. And then I just like observe them, and then I ask them questions, and I'll be like, okay, so one of my things is like tidiness. I am not a naturally super tidy person. I'm a naturally tornado-ish kind of person because I'm creative, and I'm kind of like, for me, making a mess is part of my genius, my process. And to clean up the mess sometimes is like, I need the mess to stay there for me to have that loose end open in my brain. And if I tidy it up, I like lose the idea or the thought. And so sometimes to me, that doesn't work. But I'm like, okay, let me study people who are super tidy. And I actually have a couple of YouTube videos on this. But this year I would quiz is a little bit intense, but my friends, like you were talking about this, I think you're this way, who are very organized, who are very tidy, who are very detail oriented. Okay, what makes you that way? So I have a friend in particular who will wake up every day at 5 a.m. before she goes to work to do a workout. And nobody's making her do this. Nobody's holding her accountable. She does it. And I was staying with her in LA, and I was like, Melanie, what makes you do this every day? And she said, well, most people, they'll be shocked that you're asking this because to them it's so obvious, just second nature. Well, I just do that. And then you kind of have to dig deeper because it's like the fact that it's so obvious that for them means it's so baked into who they are. So you've got to get into that identity. So she's ultimately got to, well, I know that I'll regret it if I don't. I'll regret it later if I don't do this. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting because I've studied myself. And I know that one of the reasons I don't do things is just because I don't feel like it in the moment. So my brain doesn't go, oh, you're going to regret this later if you don't. My brain is going, you don't want to do it right now, so don't do it. And I thought, that's why I don't do it. And that's why she does. How interesting. So in order for me to get myself to do something that I don't want to do, I have to reprogram my thoughts to be the same thoughts that she's having. And I just find this stuff so endlessly fascinating. So I'm constantly like, why are you the way you are? Like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And I don't want to be like everybody. I don't think that me being untidy is necessarily a fault. I just wanted to like maybe get a little bit better at it. And so I have found strategies. And one of the things I learned with tidiness in particular is people who tidy up, they're just constantly tidying up. It's a constant low level of, oh, let me just pick that up. And for me, it was this, oh, I've got to clean everything. It was like this big deal.
All at once.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I just need to get into that like low grade, constant tidying mode.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I figured that one out.
I love that because it's just constant improvement, right? You're just constantly looking at where you can improve and how you can do it that fits you.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that. Being a boss now, so owning your business, I'm sure you have some employees. Have you ever had to overcome any kind of thought patterns, or, have you ever struggled being a boss now and kind of wearing all those hats? And, how did you overcome any of those?
No, I'm perfect. I've never, no. Can you imagine? I am naturally a good inspiring leader. I am not naturally a good manager. Being a leader and being a manager are two very different things. I'm really good at, like I've mentioned, my zone of genius is, and I think everybody listening, we all have a zone of genius. And so when I say that, I'm not trying to be cocky. I think as women, we don't own what we're good at. And so it's very important to me that I acknowledge, like, this is something I'm really good at. And these are things I'm really not good at. There's a lot more things I'm not good at, but I want to own the things that I am good at. Is assessing like my thoughts and why people aren't taking action and finding mindset blocks and looking at that in my team. So I'm really good at, okay, here's what we're going to do. And here's like a thought training on this and how we can be more proactive and da, da, da. But when it comes to managing day to day, I'm not a good model of that because I've struggled to follow through with plans day to day. And so that has been a big area of weakness for me as a boss is I haven't always been great at modeling getting my tasks done on time. And when you're the leader, your team is going to take note from you on what is okay. Mm-hmm. And so I always take responsibility. If somebody on my team isn't doing something, I always look at, okay, how have I set an example for this? And I think that's really important. So yeah, managing and being a leader is, when you start your business, you're often a solopreneur. And you're doing everything yourself. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you wear all these hats. It's kind of shocking. Like, oh my God, there's all this stuff to do. But you're doing all of it. And then you're like, I have my way. I do it this way. And then it becomes more than you can do. So you bring someone on, maybe a virtual assistant, maybe, I don't know, somebody. You bring somebody on to help you with some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you kind of tell them exactly what they need to do. Okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. But it starts to grow more. And you end up going from being in this, like, I'm the creative business person who does everything to now my job is mostly managing other people. Mm-hmm. Really different from when I started my business in Paris on, I just want to like inspire people and da-da-da. It would never have been like, I want to be a manager of other human beings. Like that's a very different thing. And so transitioning into that role, something I didn't know I was going to have to do. And I also didn't realize how hard it is. My mom used to manage the psychology department of the University of Michigan, which is one of the largest academic departments in the world. And she would talk about managing and how hard it was. And I just was like, whatever. And now I manage like 3 people. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so hard. So I've gained a new level of respect for people who do this on a regular basis because it's just a phase in business. Eventually, I won't be the person doing this either, but it is sort of the CEO role right now. And that's something I've had to lean into. So again, anything that you struggle with, like read books, like, no problem is insurmountable. There's always people who've already had this problem and they've solved it. So find who those people are, study them. If they're not accessible, they probably have a book, they probably have a blog, they probably done podcast interviews, like listen to what they say about it and learn from that. That's how I figure most things out. Google it. Honestly, just Google it.
Google has an answer for everything. Okay, so what's the number one thing that business owners should focus on when they're planning content? So this is kind of your area of expertise. And I've always struggled with content, definitely, and kind of everything about it. So I'd love to know kind of the one thing that people should take away.
Oh, one thing people should take away about planning and getting content done. Okay, I got like 5 things, okay. But let's make 2 really important things. Number 1 is stop treating creating content as a task. So writing a blog post is not a task, it's a project. And the reason why you're struggling, and not specifically, but like you listening, all of you out there, is because you are thinking, oh, I got to write a blog post. That's a task for Wednesday. Write a blog, publish. It's like all in one freaking task. That's not a task. That's a project. You got to break that down. There's like 10 to 15 tasks in there. You got to brainstorm topics. You've got to outline it. You've got to write a draft. You've got to add all like kind of your links and other things and add all the missing stuff into it. You've got to then kind of format it for your blog. So what I mean by that is probably creating graphics and doing all that other stuff. You've got to publish it. You've got to share it on social media. You've got it's so much work. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest thing. Number 1 problem people have is they treat it like a task and they'll be like, I need to write a blog post this week. And they don't even know what the topic's going to be. I used to be that person. So many of us are guilty. I feel like you have like a guilty face on right now.
I know. I'm just like, oh crap.
You're like pursed lips nodding like, yeah. So yeah, break it down. And that's true of anything that you're procrastinating. It's probably because you have turned a project into a task. And so no wonder you're not doing it because you can't just do that.
No, you have to break it down so you can tackle each individual task in that project.
It reminds me of when people will email my team and they'll be like, just one quick question for Courtney. How do you get clients? I have a whole course on that. It's $1,000. Like, if you want that, like, it's not a quick question. So we do this. We think we do ourselves a disservice because we assume something's wrong with us because we're not getting this done, but really we're making it so much harder than it needs to be. So break it down. And to break it down, I'm going to turn this into a sub point, which is you don't have to make up the process. There's thousands, probably millions of people who successfully create content, and figure out there's people who have shared their process. Again, Google it, read books, find people like me who have created tons of content about how to create content. And I've shared like the process of how to publish a blog post and how to break that down. So do that. Like I have a template for my blog post. It's opening, 3 to 5 bullet points, closing, call to action, and we just plug the content in. There's very little creative process that happens there. The creative process is what am I plugging into that, not like what the format itself looks like. So yeah, it's people are just making it way harder than it needs to be. Our graphics have templates. Like my team does most of this. So I'll create the actual content, but my team will get the graphics created and publish videos to YouTube and publish the blog posts and all that stuff. So, then that brings me to my second point, which is batching.
I love batching.
So batching is just, in a nutshell, you are taking similar like tasks and doing them all in one sitting versus I'm going to create a blog post each week, sit down once a month and brainstorm all your blog posts for the next 2 months and then outline all of them for the next 2 months. And I will do this once a month. We'll do every month, once a month, if that makes sense. So I will, in the beginning of the month, and I will have Monday, I do like topic brainstorming, keyword research, because we do YouTube. So all that's really important for SEO. We'll do all of that. I'll do all of that. And then on Wednesday, outlining the post. And then on Friday is scripting the videos. And then probably the next week is filming them. So I do like all 4 videos. I'll do, the research, then the outlining, then the scripting, then the filming, and then the editing is all in batches because you're more efficient that way. So yes, if I need to create a blog post every week and then you're creating the blog post the week that you need to publish the blog post, you're never going to do that. And that brings me to my third tip, which is create some kind of accountability. So some of us are really good at being accountable to ourselves. But if you find yourself procrastinating, it's probably because you're letting yourself off the hook. You're maybe being a little bit perfectionistic about it. You're not breaking the task down enough. So for me, what really helped is A, promising my community that there would be a post every week, and B, hiring my virtual assistant. And it was part of her job description to publish the post every week. And so if I wasn't getting it done, I was spending money on her that was getting wasted. And she was waiting and I didn't want to look like a hot mess. So I would get it done for her.
Yeah, I love that.
People.
Use other people to make sure you get your stuff done.
Yep. I'll do this on Instagram stories. I'll be like, hello, everybody. Today I need to do these 5 things. Please hold me accountable. And then I get it done because I don't want my community to think that I'm like
slacking off.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about batching, which I'm a huge fan of, and I think that definitely works. Do you have any other organizing hacks that you use that has worked for you? Because I know you don't like to do all that process stuff, but...
Yeah, organizing for rebels is one of my favorite topics. It's like productivity for rebels, organizing for rebels. With organizing, I think it's really important that you get really clear on what matters, because when you're running a business or in life, I don't even care if you're not running a business, it's really easy to let to put out fires constantly and let things that pop up steal your attention. It's so easy that it's hard not to have that happen. You have to put up an effort for that not to happen. And the effort you have to put up is you have to decide, for the next, it depends on the period you want to choose. I like to do 90 days, so like 90-day goals. For the next 90 days, what is my number one goal that I want to accomplish? And then break down what are the things I'm going to do to make that happen, and break it down into the most minutia that you can that needs to get done, and then put all that on your calendar. And I think part of that is having some kind of project management system. So there's lots of them out there, and people are very evangelical about which one they use sometimes, but there's like Trello, Asana. We use ClickUp on my team, Basecamp. There's all these different project management software. ClickUp is free, Trello's free, Asana's free, to break down projects and get used to doing that process of planning out what are all the things I need to do? And then assigning due dates to all those things. And then the piece is, okay, every week sitting down and being like, what are the top 3 things I need to get done this week? And come hell or high water, I'm getting those things done. And I'm going to book out time in my calendar to make sure that I get those things done. And it's okay if you only follow that 80% of the time. You don't have to be perfect about it, but you have to give it like your best effort, because otherwise you're going to end up doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't move the needle forward in your business. You're going to get really distracted by like, I need to post on Instagram, which is completely and utterly useless in most cases. So unless like your goal is to grow your Instagram, which hopefully that's attached to like why you want to grow your Instagram, because I'm going to go on a little bit of like a tangent here, but I have so many people in my course who have thousands. They have that 10K swipe up and they have no clients. And that's why they come to me. And then I have my little following of like 3,500 people and have a multiple 6-figure business. And because we associate like more higher Instagram with more business, not the case at all whatsoever. So make sure when you're deciding what your goals are and how you're going to get there, that you have proof from other people that that is the way to do that. And you understand that that's how it's going to work, right? Not like, I hope that if I grow my Instagram, then money is going to fall out of the sky. Because it doesn't. I feel like you're having a big...
know what to say right now. It's like light bulb.
I love this so much. Yeah.
Oh,
I
crap.
think people listening are probably like that too. They're like, called out. Yeah.
People focus so much on Instagram following, and you have to be like 10K plus to get a certain amount of like monetization. And people are just so fixated on that amount of like, what can they do to increase the following and blah, but the fact that you're not at
Can't
10K,
take followers to the bank, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're making 6 figures.
Yeah. You can't pay your rent with followers and likes and comments.
Clients, you have to convert
You
them.
have to convert people to sales. And I will shout about this forever because I don't think this is ever going to go away. I think we're really in a society is moving in a direction where this is just going to be something we're going to have to work on for the rest of my life. I don't think that this is going to go away in my career. So I'm going to really devote myself to showing people, look, it's great to do that, but it's all vanity. And it's not money. And I have a good friend, Tyler McCall. He's a great Instagram expert who focuses on this. And so I really like to recommend people like Tyler because he teaches Instagram in a way that shows you it's not about that. And he has at this point $1 million business. So shout out to Tyler because he's rocking it. And whenever I see people getting stuck in this, I'm like, and people are selling programs on this because people are willing to buy it because they think that's what's going to help them. I had an Instagram account reach out to me. I think they had more than 100,000 followers. And they were like, we'd love you to write or rewrite an ebook for us and we'll promote you on our account. And I was like, no. I said, I don't do work for free. That's not payment. Some vague shout out on your account is not something that, and they were very defensive about it. And I said, shame on you for being a female entrepreneur empowerment account that does not pay people for their work. This is atrocious. I'm you can tell I like to talk. I'm actually speechless about the people like that thinking it's okay to not pay someone for their work. And so I thought, I'm in a position where a lot of people would fall into this and say like, okay, I'll do it. And I need to stand up for this. So yeah, don't do work for free. Don't do work for exposure. Like this is all crap. If their exposure is so good, then they should have the money to pay you to do your work. Clearly they're doing something wrong if they can't afford to pay you.
Mm-hmm. Especially at 100K, right?
Yeah. So that's an alarm bell to me that, I can't tell you how many people out there, most people with big accounts, are using bots, they're buying followers. So you never know what is real and what's not. And so just please stop making assumptions about, I'm really on my Instagram soapbox right now, but
I love it.
And rant. But I hope that that's made a difference for some people. Yeah.
It's so true, right? People get so caught up in it and they believe anything and they go by numbers.
People don't swipe up anyway. Like anyone with the 10K account will tell you, like very few people actually swipe up.
I never swipe up.
They don't want to leave the platform. They want to stay on Instagram. So it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. It's very true. Okay. So you work a lot. You have a big business. So how do you shut off work so that I know your goal is to like live and to have freedom. So you're probably going to love this question. You're like, I've already shut off.
Like I never work.
But how do you make sure that you kind of just stop and now it's my downtime. I'm putting the phone away. I'm not answering emails. I'm not thinking about my list that I have to get done. How do you kind of keep that separate?
Oh, I love this question so much. I cannot even.
You're like, yes.
I am goals. Okay. Boundaries. Boundaries. This is a whole episode, a whole topic, a whole course, a whole like business on this, but you have to have boundaries with yourself that you uphold, boundaries with your clients, boundaries with your team, boundaries with your spouse, boundaries with your friends. My students call me the boundary queen because I have like no issue telling people no. I have no issue saying I don't do that. I have no issue. I don't feel like I owe anyone anything. And so I feel like what I can do is be a model for a lot of women really struggle with this. And I try to just model it like it's okay. And because I don't fear pissing other people off. So I'm like, okay, I'll be the sacrificial lamb on the boundary thing.
Good.
Yeah. So one boundary I've just set in my business is I don't do summits anymore. So I get a lot of, and I'm at a point in my business where I get a lot of requests for stuff like this. So podcasts, summits, be a guest in my program, give a training for this. So what I've decided with my team is if I can just show, like, I love this. You came to my house. So like you come to my house
easy for you, right?
I don't want to do anything. We sit, we have fun. I love talking. I love podcast interviews. Easy peasy, no problem. But if I have to create content in advance or I have to like, if there's a requirement that I have to send X number of emails to my list, like I don't do it. I'm like, I can't, I probably will promote stuff, but I cannot promise or guarantee or anything like that. So my team now has this boundary that they get to enforce. And we've just changed this because I was doing a lot of summits. I still have a few that I'm engaged in. And so we just say, if I have to do stuff in advance, it's a no. If it's just a, hey, like, let's do a podcast interview, great, no problem. So that's a good example of a boundary. Another boundary I have is I don't do email. I just don't do email. You know, I have a secret email. You know my secret email.
Only find you.
Yeah, only people who I have a relationship with know my email. It's weird. It's a weird email on purpose, so nobody can guess it. And I don't do email. So I have customer service. I have people who take care of my email. I actually have 2 people who manage my email, one on the personal side and one on the business side. And people who know me know not to expect a response from me in any kind of reasonable amount of time. And that's because I suck at it and I hate it. And my team does a better job. So like as a podcaster, if you want me to be on your podcast, it's way more in your interest to have my wonderful customer service gal, Becky, responding because she's like you. She's super organized. She's super on top of things. People constantly tell me like, oh my God, she's amazing. I'm like, I know. That's why you don't want to email me because I will never respond. So you want Becky. It's in your interest to get Becky. She will make it happen. I will not make it happen. So that actually is in the interest of people emailing me as well. So that's a boundary that I have. I try to set a boundary in how many events I go to a week or do a week. So that includes like outings with friends, attending a networking event, things like that. And that's just something you learn over time. If you feel like you're getting really exhausted, okay, what did I do this week? Maybe I overdid that amount. Oh my God, I have boundaries on literally everything. Often, I don't do this all the time, but I actually delete my social media apps off of my phone every single night. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like so easy. It's easy to add them back and delete them. People think like, oh my God, it's gone. Like what's going to happen? Like you just re-download it the next day. So normally when I'm like, okay, I need to be done for the day, especially if I'm like, I really need to not let myself on this, I'll just go delete Instagram, delete Facebook, delete whatever else I have. And then the next morning I'll re-download them So that creates enough of a barrier that I don't just mindlessly go into the app when I'm trying not to.
Oh my God.
So.
I go into the app like a billion times a day just because my finger just touches it. Like
exactly. You don't even realize it.
I don't even want to scroll, but somehow I find the need that I have to.
I know. It's not our fault. Our brains are hijacked. So I create this barrier because it's enough of a barrier that I don't go back into it. Especially it keeps me from doing it in bed at night and in the morning, which are the hardest times. So, and when you re-download the apps, they just log you back in like immediately. You don't like lose anything. I don't think people realize that. It's not hard.
I feel like I'm losing something if I delete the app. Like something.
It doesn't delete anything. Yeah. So I don't really check. I mean, I already said I don't do email, so I don't check it on my phone. I have it on my phone in case of circumstances only because I don't have a problem. Like I don't struggle with not checking email. If you struggle with not checking email, delete the app from your phone. Yeah, things like that. I mean, I guess it's like figuring, but where do you need a boundary? It's wherever you're having a frustration, you feel resentful of people. My friends all know like texting is the best way to get a hold of me, but even that's questionable. Like I'm not going to respond to everything and like be super chatty. I'll be super chatty when I'm around you, but like, I don't do that.
You're just not that type of person.
I just do train people how to treat you and what to expect from you. And I train people to expect very little from me so that when I actually do deliver and show up and give, they're extra impressed.
I love that.
That's how I go through life.
It's true. I like that because it's definitely like with people pleasers, I'm definitely a people pleaser. I want to make sure I answer every email, every text, like within seconds of getting them, which is super annoying.
And you know what you can do with email? This is a great trick for anyone. I'm just teaching my husband about this is like, if you want to respond to an email at 8:30 at night or like 2 a.m, go ahead and write that email and then use Boomerang in Gmail to schedule it for, I think it's native in Gmail now. I was just having this conversation with our mastermind group that we have, that you just schedule the email to go out during business hours or like schedule it to go out 24 hours later so that you're creating that gap. Because if you have a client email you and you email them back right away, you're training that client to think that that's what to expect. And they're not going to be extra grateful that you're doing it. They're just going to be expecting you to do it. So here's what I mean by training people to expect very little from me is I'm like, I'll email you back in 48 hours. And then when I do email back faster, you're like, oh my God, thank you. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So how do you make sure to take time for self-care? What do you do for self-care? Like, what do you like that kind of relaxes you and resets you for being able to focus on work when you need to?
I love myself. I love myself so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love myself so much. And I know that by taking care of myself, I'm the greatest asset for my business. And by taking care of myself, I take care of my business. And I think it's about associating self-care. If you struggle with self-care, it's about associating it with something that you don't struggle with caring about. So like, if you're like, I struggle with self-care, but I'm great at like giving to other people. Well, you need to learn that when you take care of yourself, you'll be better able to take care of other people. So that can give you like a little doorway in to be willing to do it. So, I mean, I think it's different for everybody, but, and the things I struggle with sometimes are my self-care is actually the opposite of a lot of people. It's following my schedule. It's doing my to-do list. Some people, they're too much on the follow my schedule to-do list, and their self-care needs to be, take some time off and indulge in like watching something on TV or like having a drink. Like for me, like I do too much of that. So like not that. So you have to be clear on who you are and what you struggle with and what you most are denying yourself. That's what it is. What are you denying yourself? How are you unwhole right now? For me, I'm unwhole because I deny myself following through with the plans I give myself. And so by creating that accountability and self-integrity, that makes me whole. But some people, they do too much of that. They're too productive. They're too like that you actually need to schedule in time to relax. Go to the spa. I like to do it in ways where I schedule something that I have to pay for and then I do it. Because if it's just like, oh, later I'll take a bath, like you might not do it. I don't know.
No. Something will come in the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have any other tips for entrepreneurs trying to find that right balance in their life between work and life?
I think it all sums up to know yourself, get to know yourself, and where is your unbalance. And that balance isn't finding some perfect like pie chart of time management of like family time 6 hours a day, work 8 hours a day. Like that's not balance. Balance is, what do I need right now? Sometimes family is going to take precedent. Sometimes work's going to take precedent. Just because you're in a phase that work is taking precedent doesn't mean that work is more important than family and you need to have some kind of like crisis about that and feel guilty. It just means right now I need to prioritize work, and maybe that needs to be communicated to your family. Maybe let's say you have kids, you have a husband, you have a lot of responsibilities. I would say it's really important in advance to communicate to your partner that, look, for the next 2 weeks, I'm getting my head down in this stuff. Can we talk about how we can plan for this in a way that I'm able to focus on work? Because if you don't do that, your partner might feel like, what's happening? And if you're clear about it, it's just I think this is like good relationship advice in general.
Yes.
Like have the conversation before there's a problem.
Communicate. Yes, that's definitely a good one. Communication is key in any relationship. I want to go back to that whole, I love myself.
I do. I'm so great.
Because you definitely don't hear a lot of people truly say it. And just the way that you said it with such conviction.
Yeah.
Like you actually do love yourself. So have you always been like that? Did you struggle kind of getting to this point?
I had a realization when I was in high school that nobody was thinking about me as much as I was thinking about me, that they're all thinking about themselves. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why or how that came on, but I was just like, oh, the things I'm obsessing about are about me. Everyone else is obsessing about themselves. I'm just going to stop doing that. Like I realized nobody notices the stuff I'm doing. They don't. Nobody notices. And when people get upset with you, it's usually because they're upset at themselves. Like, and yes, I'm not saying, I don't want people to be like, God, she thinks she does nothing wrong. I do a lot of things wrong. And I take responsibility for those things without berating myself. Mm-hmm. You know, okay, I yelled at my husband. I was a little bit like, I can be a little bit like argumentative and a little bit volatile sometimes. And I'm self-aware enough, and I've done a lot of work on that to be like, okay, I recognize that that's happening. And I apologize for it. And I'm going to examine and get curious about why I did that. And I'm going to work on finding a solution. So I think it's like, stop taking your faults and your mistakes and your failures and your, I don't know, whatever you perceive as a weakness so personally. And I view not loving yourself as self-indulgent and selfish. I think to love yourself is selfless. So I think that's the reframe that I have is I find when people are so like women just sit around like complaining about their bodies. And I find that very self-indulgent and very self-centered. And I know that's really shocking, but I also had a different model growing up. So I have to give my mom a lot of credit. I never had a model of a woman who was constantly complaining about her weight and her size and all of that. And I know my mom has had her own journey of like loving herself, and she's been very clear about that. But she always modeled self-love. And I think I have to always be compassionate for people who didn't have that model and maybe the opposite of that, or their mother criticized them even. And I just want, again, like I said, with boundaries, I want to be a model of not that. So yeah, it is possible. And I think it's actually better for everybody if we just like get over that and like move on. Which sorry, I mean, I'm really insensitive. So no, I apologize for that. But
to the point, right? Like no sugar coating it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that those issues aren't real. I'm just saying like sometimes women, we like bond over complaining about ourselves. And I don't do that. Like I've had friends who tried to start that with me. Like, oh, I feel so fat. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, and so I don't do it. And then they don't do that with me anymore. So I think sometimes as women, it's like our bonding thing is we all, you know, that Mean Girls scene where they're like, I hate my thighs. I hate like, I never did that. And like whatever Lindsay Lohan's character, Katie or whatever is like, I have really bad breath in the morning. Like, that's me. I'm like, I don't know. I don't hate anything.
What do
like,
I say?
Yeah. So like, it's really awkward for me. But you see in that movie, she wasn't raised as like to do that. She was in this, different society where that wasn't a thing. And so it's a cultural, societal thing that we've learned. It is not necessary or natural that we do that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. We get stuck in our own heads and we kind of compare ourselves to what everybody else is. And it's like this whole sick game that we get to play.
It's super sick.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. And I really do feel for anyone who's struggling with that. And I just want you to know it's not necessary. We don't all have to talk about our weight all the time. I've never been on a diet in my life. And again, like I'm a thin person. I don't want to I don't want anyone to feel like bad about that. I'm not shaming or judging anyone, but I think it's more about, I don't sit around criticizing myself and thinking about the things that I need to change about myself. I sit around thinking about, I'm great.
Focus on what your good qualities and, what you're proud about, and stop focusing on all the negative.
It doesn't mean I love everything about myself. I just accept it and I don't take it personally. I don't take the fact that I don't love a certain thing about my body to mean that I'm unworthy of love. Like that's a story. I can just I don't really like that. There's no emotion attached to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. Every body is a bikini body, ladies.
It really isn't, but
I can't stand the culture we have. And again, because I wasn't in that ever, now as an adult, seeing just how many women are so wrapped up in this stuff, it shocks me. And
a lot of people get so stuck on the whole, you have to be perfect in order to wear a bathing suit, or, your cellulite is showing.
Yeah.
Or you got thighs, or there's always going to be something that you're not happy with. And I think we need to stop focusing on all of those things and just move past it and just be happy with who you are and in your body.
Yeah. Stop making it mean something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, this has been an amazing chat, to be honest. You definitely lit up some light bulbs in my head and definitely made me stop to think a little bit.
We covered a lot of things.
We did. We covered everything.
Damn it there. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Courtney, for sitting down with us and for sharing all of this amazing information and advice and your story. I definitely loved hearing all about it, and I'm sure everybody else will.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a really, really fun chat.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to revueblanc.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another Unplugged conversation.